Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so very much for watching. And I really want to say thank you guys so much for continuing to support and stay tuned for my videos. I know it's been a while since my last video, but I personally felt the need to kind of just take some time to work on myself and spend more quality time with my kids. Health-wise, just being more conscious and doing a little bit more work on myself in that realm too. So I'm back and I want to talk to you guys about a really important topic I think you guys will benefit from at any stage of the track that you're on, and that's what life is like after you've become an attending anesthesiologist. What are some things that I've learned and how those things can help you? So in this video, I'm going to tell you guys my top 5 things that I've learned since becoming an attending anesthesiologist that I really wish I knew before. Stay tuned. So I really wanted to talk to you guys about this topic because on a daily basis, I feel that I'm constantly learning new things. And I've been asked this question a lot from both the residents that I work with on a daily basis that are getting toward the end of training, and from people that I meet in my daily life, as well as people asking questions as well in the comments. So number one, you're gonna have a higher level of responsibility. When you're a resident and you're learning all the aspects of anesthesia, you're ultimately going to be answering to your attending, and that is going to be your senior. And that person will be the one that makes the final judgment call on what to do for each patient and decides whether or not the plan is going to be safe. Ultimately, it's their responsibility. So all of their decisions are covered. They have to be covered under malpractice insurance. As a resident as well, you're also covered under malpractice insurance, but your attending's insurance plan has to be such that it will cover any incidences that may occur. And they're ultimately the one who is going to be responsible for answering for any issues that may come. Anything that happens while a patient is under their care and they're the attending of record for any anesthetic will be ultimately their responsibility. So there's a higher stake when you're an attending as far as that goes. And that's something that in the early days of me getting into that level was kind of hard to swallow because I hadn't really had that exposure as a resident. Also because it never really feels real until it's you. So at that time, when I first entered my practice, I really understood how to carefully plan what I was going to do for each patient, keeping in mind that this is all going to be on me if anything happens. And that is a great responsibility. So depending on where you work, you might actually be responsible for covering your own malpractice insurance. So in my specific employment situation, my hospital covers malpractice insurance for the attending anesthesiologist, which in contrast to some private practice facilities may not be the case. That's why some salaries in the private practice setting may be higher than those in the academic setting. So with that, let's get into number 2. Number 2, I know you guys are all interested in this, and this was something that I was looking forward to since college, and that's the increase in pay. As an attending anesthesiologist, you can expect to make anywhere from 3 to 5 times more than your pay as a resident. That can be quite a shocker. I remember my first attending paycheck, and I remember looking at it with so many different emotions, but mostly shock and kind of like, I felt like Christmas morning. It was a major difference from anything I've ever seen before. The one thing I did really get floored by was the difference between the amount of taxes I paid from a resident to an attending. As you can imagine, there's a major difference, a really astounding difference between your gross and net pay. This depends on which state you work in, of course, but in New York State, it's a pretty significant chunk. But that being said, going back to the last topic of having to be liable for covering malpractice, so especially in private practice, considering that with your salary, you might be responsible for covering your own malpractice. That's part of the reason why the salaries can be quite a bit higher in private practice. So that being said, as you are more responsible and more liable, getting back to that same concept, as an attending, you're gonna be, if you're anyone like me, paying back your student loans. So you're gonna be paying back your student loans, and If you have kids, you're going to have to be taking care of them, as well as maybe if you're moving into a larger home or purchasing a car for the first time, you have those bills as well to be responsible for. So those are the things that I was already having to deal with as a resident, but became a little bit more forefront and more prominent when I became an attending. So I was in the place where I was like, okay, now I can get the car that I want, move into a bigger home, changing my kids into a better school, all those things, all the things that everyone is thinking of and dreaming of for their life, and to have a better life once they're done and they're finally a full-fledged physician. But just keep in mind, all those things are costly, and now that your earning power is higher, you're going to be eligible for more loans and things like that. So you always want to keep in mind that things tend to balance out with what you're given if you are not careful. So my advice would be to be as prudent as possible when you get to that level, so that you're not incurring more debt than you can actually manage and you're not living above your means. So things that I never considered before as a resident or ever in life was whether or not to get a financial planner, and if so, what things should I be investing in, and what things should I be saving for, and what insurance plans I should be taking out. So those are all questions and concerns that I never considered before becoming an attending, that are pretty much real life important decisions that need to be made. So with that being said, I want to get into number 3, which is the difference in your work-life schedule. So as you can fully understand, when you go from your residency to an attending life, you should see a difference in work hour requirements. As you know, as a resident, you're supposed to live in the hospital, you're supposed to be there for the majority of your days so that you can learn as much as possible and become as great a doctor as you can be. When you're done with training though, you do expect to have less time requirement and hopefully less call. So that's what I really loved about anesthesiology. I found that as an attending, not only did my time requirement at the hospital go down and allowing me to have more time at home, to spend more time with my husband and my kids. So that's actually what made me decide upon anesthesiology ultimately. When I was a medical student and talking to other anesthesia attending preceptors during my anesthesia rotation, I listened to their perspective of the work-life balance of anesthesia and how it allotted a lot more free time outside of the hospital. And that's something that I really needed and wanted for my professional life. A good balance, or close enough to a balance, where I could achieve more time outside of the hospital doing what I love, and then also being able to be very much engaged and happy in my professional space. In contrast to other specialties, even when you become an attending, you'll still have a lot of responsibilities at home and maybe even similar work hours to residency. So that's the thing that really drew me to this specialty, that I found was the most valuable part of the specialty, was the fact that it offered that contrast in time requirement. So in other specialties, though you may have that bump up in salary from residency, you may not really appreciate the difference in the time requirement that you have as far as hours needed to be spent at the hospital and also doing work at home. So that's one thing that I really appreciated about anesthesia, is that it does allow for you to have a really enjoyable work-life balance. So just know that if you're in training, if you're in med school, if you're in residency, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. When you are done, you will have more time for yourself, and you will have more time for your kids, and whatever other endeavors that you want to pursue, you will be able to pursue them with this specialty, as I'm doing now, making videos for you. So that brings me to number 4. So the amount of appreciation for the specialty, the amount of thoughtfulness that goes into the planning of anesthetic for a patient really increases when you're an attending. So for example, if you're doing a procedure during residency, you typically discuss the patient history with your attending the night before, and you guys decide on an anesthetic plan together. And oftentimes, as you get more senior in residency, your attending will give you more autonomy and allow you to come up with a plan and really express your opinions and thoughts about what would be the best way to care for a patient. So ultimately though, you know the attending has that responsibility at the end to make sure that what you're doing is the standard of care, is safe, and is something that would be appropriate for that patient's surgery and that patient's medical history. So when you become an attending, those things are at the forefront of your mind in everything that you do. As you're in training, those things are on your mind, but I want to say that I really didn't feel the weight of my decisions or my responsibility at the time. And again, you find yourself more appreciative of what you're doing, the art of what you're doing, and especially the consequences of what you're doing when you're the one who's making the final judgment call. And also with that, it really does make me feel very rewarded to be in this position. So this is the part of it all that everyone is looking forward to. And I want to say to you that it does happen. When you're done with all of the work and all the study and the training, you will feel rewarded with what you do on a daily basis. Okay, so that brings me to number 5. So with this profession and basically any other profession, once you're done with training, you're going to be required to be a continual adult learner. And as an attending, I found that even looking through the requirements for maintaining my certification in anesthesia, that it's a continual process and I need to be constantly working toward building my knowledge base, staying abreast of the current topics and the current standards, and that the learning never stops. And even though you think you made it to the end, you've got to the finish line, you graduated residency, and now you're an attending, you continue to learn. And it's something that is required. It's number 1, required for you to maintain a certification in your area. And number 2, it's important for you to be constantly improving and being on the cutting edge, knowing what the newest technologies are in your field. For me, and my passion in anesthesia, which is airway management, just knowing what are the newest gadgets that are out there, airway equipment devices, being aware of the newest technologies that are available, techniques and tools for just being the best you can at your craft, for mastering your skills and just staying on top of your game. One thing I really appreciate and enjoy about working in an academic setting is that is at the forefront. Just always being able to work in an ever-changing environment. So the goal is to be constantly learning, constantly growing, and continuing your education. So with that, I thank you guys so much for watching. I want to encourage you to be prepared for the steps of your journey, especially the final step of becoming an attending. Know that you can get there if you just persist. And when you do, you're going to be greatly rewarded. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and definitely comment and let me know what you guys want to see in the next video. Until then, take care.